Well, today we wrap up our series in Philippians, and it's a series we've titled Letters for Living. The Apostle Paul, he wrote letters. He wrote letters. He wrote letters to churches, to co-workers in the gospel, to help them understand how to live the Christian life. And about life and living, Jesus had this to say. He said, "The thief comes only to steal, kill, and destroy. I have come that they may have life, that us, may have life and have it to the full." So Paul wrote about how to keep the thief from killing and stealing and destroying, and how to have life and life to the full. Let me just say this. We've all experienced the thief. Every single one of us have experienced the thief. The thief is a liar, and whose lies that we bought into. Every single person in this room has been impacted by the thief. If you've experienced pain, if you've experienced heartache, you've been impacted by the thief. And today I'm going to talk about a specific way that I think all of us in this room have been impacted by the thief. A very specific way. And we've all suffered because of the same issue, a specific issue common to all of us that leads to an unsatisfied longing. If you've ever been unsatisfied with life and a longing, odds are you've been impacted in this specific way. It's a lack of life to the full. It's a lack of life to the full, and I'm going to name the problem, but it's not our only problem, but it's a problem. But first, graphs and charts. I kid you not. Graphs and charts. Here's one. How's this make you feel? This is the national debt as of 2023. Look at all that national debt. It hasn't always been that way. You see, notice on the left side of the chart, not much national debt. Sometime in the 70s, we had a recession and it slowly inched up. But even as our economy rebounded, we just kept spending and spending. Woohoo! 31 trillion. Is that a lot? Okay, now before you start judging the government, let's take a look at the plank in our own eye. Consumer debt. Look at that slope. It's eerily similar to the previous slope that we saw, isn't it? Now that's 1943 to 2010. It starts to dip down a little bit on the right side of that chart, doesn't it? But let's just look at some more updated numbers. Here we go. Consumer credit card debt. Woohoo! We did it. We hit $1 trillion. Americans have reached $1 trillion in credit card debt. Okay, here's another fun one. Is anybody having fun with charts and graphs and charts? Okay, here's another one. This is 2016 oil consumption. That by country. And look at it, we're world leaders. We're number one. We're number one. In 2016, we were 20% of the fuel consumption of the world. Now, China was close with 13%. They're the closest one to us. But come on, Aaron, we are leaders in the world. We are just one of the strongest economies. And of course, we spend more. But let's take this into account. This is the world's population, and we're less than 5%. Less than 5% of the world's population. Yet that 5% burns 20% of the fuel in 2016. Well, China's 18% burnt 13%, and India's 18% only burns about 4%. So that's what we consume. Now, let's look at what we produce. Okay, this is the U.S. Divided by industry. Now, out of that entire pie, only 10% is manufacturing anything. So, less than 5% of the population and only 10% of our population makes anything. What's wrong with you, Aaron? Do you hate America? No, not at all. I'm just pointing out our shared reality. We have a shared reality. And the problem that we all have is that we are consumers. We are consumers. Now, I'm not suggesting that, we're just a little bit of a consumer. We're consumers. This is the primary way that I think we view the world in. It's a lens that we view the world through. It's the water that we swim in. It's the world we've been raised in. It's wired into our brains. It drives our behaviors. And you can say, well, hey, listen, I grew up without anything. Oh, but don't you want it? I mean, the lottery exists because we want it. We want it. The lottery is a terrible waste of money, but it preys on our wanting more. And the lottery is not the only one. It's not the only wolf licking its lips. Advertisers have us in their sight. They are the hired guns of the corporate machine. Why do companies spend $7 million for a 30-second Super Bowl ad? Because it works. And you can say, listen, I'm not susceptible to the schemes of advertisers, but I will argue that you're wrong. None of us want to believe that we're gullible, but we all are able to be led. Advertisers throw chum in the water, and we're the sharks that can't help ourselves. Do you know what I now need? I saw a pickup truck, a shiny black pickup truck. And the tailgate opens and closes on its own. I didn't even know I needed that. But I want it. And this hunger within us, it's not just for things. It's more than just wanting things. It's wanting experiences. It's wanting and expecting our way and right away. We're all food critics. We're critics of everything from the speed of service to the temperature in the room. My daughter works in the fast food industry, and she will tell you that people expect instantaneous food, not just fast food. No, and it's this lie that we would be happy if we just have something different. If we just have something different than what we have, then we'll be happy. I'd be happy if I had a different spouse. There's got to be a person perfectly tailored to all my wants and desires and needs. I've seen it in the movies. This is just a general, not a personal testimony. It's the lie that of pornography that says our carnal pleasure will fulfill us. It's the lie that achieving more than others, winning life will complete me. It's the lie that the finer things in life will bring me peace and contentment and fulfillment. It drives our decisions and our choices. It's consumerism. It drives our spiritual life. We choose our communities of worship based on the style and performance, the entertainment value of the preaching, the cool vibe of the space, the quality of the coffee, the hype of the presentation, the options for our kids, teens, seniors, and whether or not there are cool people just like me there to hang out with and do life together. A place where my politics are always agreed upon, a place where I can be validated and appreciated for the gift that I am to the world. And by the way, we all want this within 10 minutes of our home, and I hope they don't talk too much about money. Listen, do you know the number one reason that pastors hear that people leave the church? When you hear, the number one reason is I wasn't being fed. I just wasn't being fed there. And this is like, I wasn't being fed. Feed me, Seymour. Just once I want to hear someone say, I left the church because I wasn't being challenged in my faith enough. I wasn't being challenged to follow Jesus enough. Ooh, gee, Aaron, this is the type of sermon that can drive people away. I want to calm, and then like on a day that it seemed to already be away. You might want to calm down a bit. It's not fun to hear. Tell the people what they want to hear. Tell the people what their itching ears want to hear. Listen, I'm saying this, church, not to shame anyone. I'm not saying to shame anyone. But we need to be aware. We need to be aware of what drives our behaviors and our decisions, what occupies our attention. Are we driven to pick up our cross and follow Jesus, which is what he calls us to? where He is the central figure in our being and our doing? Or are we driven by a false gospel that says, and by the way, this false gospel is the gospel of the thief, that says it's about me? 1 John chapter 2 says, "Do not love the world or anything in the world. If anyone loves the world, love for the Father is not in them. For everything in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, comes not from the Father, but from the world. The world and its desires pass away, but whoever does the will of God lives forever." Now, the world, it mentions the world. The word translated as world here is from the Greek cosmos. And cosmos can mean the created world. It can mean the beauty of the mountains and the starry sky and the awesomeness of nature. But that's not what he's referring to here. This is referring to the system that lures us into being focused on self above all else. That drives us to be self-centered, that rather than Jesus-centered. The lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, the pride of life. This is universal for every human being. Every human being. Every human who draws breath is susceptible to the lure of the cosmos. Now, earlier, it may have sounded as if I'm picking on the American way of life. Everyone on earth can be led astray by cosmos. But perhaps due to our abundance of wealth, the history in which we've emerged from, we are the most individualistic society in the history of the world. And it's not even close. More than any other culture ever, we think in terms of my rights and my needs and my wants on a scale that no culture ever has. And add to that abundance. I mean, you might ask, why doesn't God want me to have nice things? Why doesn't God want me to do what I want to do? Well, listen, sometimes the thing that we want is bad. Like sometimes it's just bad. Like it's sinful. It's, like wanting your neighbor's wife or wanting someone dead or wanting someone, I want their possessions, so I'll take it. Sometimes it's just bad. Sometimes it's not bad. But it is bad for us to have. God made it plain in the Ten Commandments that we're not to have any other gods before Him. We are not to worship false idols. We're not to worship something that is not God Himself. Timothy Keller says idolatry means turning a good thing to an ultimate thing. So is your happiness bad? No. But when your happiness becomes the ultimate thing, it becomes an idol. When we make our own happiness the God that we worship, when we think that will lead us to fulfillment, instead it leads us to a life that is never satisfied. I want never gets. I want is never satisfied. Proverbs 27:20 says, "Death and destruction are never satisfied, and neither are human eyes." Ecclesiastes 5:10 says, "Whoever loves money never has enough. Whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their income." Ecclesiastes 6 says, "Everyone's toil is for their mouth, yet their appetite is never satisfied." Satisfaction. Last week I sang a Beatles song badly. This week I could sing the Rolling Stones. I can't get no satisfaction. Well, I try, and I try, and I try, and I try. I can't get no. Okay. I'll stick to preaching. I think it goes without saying, though, that life to the full would include satisfaction, being satisfied. I mean, Jesus offered life to the full, a satisfied life. And we live in this land of abundance, and yet who's truly satisfied? Who has peace? We have unlimited options. You'd think we'd be satisfied with our unlimited options. I have a friend who grew up on the missionary field. Her dad was an Assemblies of God missionary in Thailand, And he was like, oversaw all the missions. So they were quite wealthy for Thailand. I mean, they had, servants, and they had quite wealthy for their setting. But she said, what defined America for her, the United States for her, was the cereal aisle in the grocery store. Limitless options. And she grew up in a place where even though she was wealthy beyond everyone else around her, might have had 2 cereal options in the grocery. Studies have shown that the more options we have, the less likely we are to experience satisfaction. If there are 3 flavors of ice cream, I'll have the chocolate. You're more likely to be satisfied than if there are 30. Have you ever waited in line and wondered, I don't know what to get? What should I get? What's flavor? Can I have another sample? Let me try the other sample. And we walk away and it's like, what? This is good, but should I have gotten the mocha latte flavor or the birthday cake flavor? Or should I have gotten the lemon sorbet? I don't know. Did I make the right choice? You know what dating used to be like? How many girls do I know? That was my pool for dating. Like how many, and which one of them will actually go out with me? That was the dating pool. Now, you have endless options. You can scroll, and swipe left or right. I don't know which. You swipe one way. And people are waiting longer to get married because I got to make sure I get the right one out of the endless options. Listen, I love my house, but I want more room in my garage. And the master suite with a master bath would be sweet. The more options, the more abundance of choice, the less satisfaction that we have. And you might be saying, wait a minute, isn't this a sermon in Philippians? Let's go to Philippians. At long last, we're going to look at what the Apostle Paul wrote about all this to the Philippians. He said, join together in following my example, brothers and sisters. Just as you have us as a model, keep your eyes on those who live as we do. Now listen, if you say, hey, model yourself after how I'm living, right? That might sound braggadocious. But remember, Paul said, I am being poured out like a drink offering. Like I've given all, for everything that I gained, it was a loss for the cause of Christ. Everything else is worthless except for knowing Jesus. He had given everything. So he's saying, live that way. He says, for as I have often told you before now and tell you again, even with tears, many live as enemies of the cross of Christ. Their destiny is destruction. Their God is their stomach. And their glory is in their shame. Their mind is set on earthly things. Paul was warning them about the path laid out by the thief who comes to steal, kill, and destroy. Those who follow the thief, their God is their stomach, their appetite, their cravings, their lust for more or something else. And because of this, their destiny is destruction. Their mind is set on the things of the cosmos. But then he goes on, but our citizenship is in heaven, and we eagerly await a Savior from there, the Lord Jesus Christ, who by the power that enables him to bring everything under his control will transform our lowly bodies so that we will become like his glorious body. The eyes on appetites, the lure of the cosmos is the way of humanity and the way of this world, but we are not to belong to that world. Our citizenship is in heaven. We should realize that we can't be fulfilled by the things of this present age. That we are waiting for true fulfillment that comes when Jesus returns and makes everything right. And transforms our lowly bodies into glorious bodies. Imagine improving on this. Thank you for that laugh. Paul wrote these things while imprisoned in Rome. He was imprisoned for proclaiming that Jesus is Lord. Now, prior to embracing Jesus as Lord, Paul was a wealthy Pharisee, and a Roman citizen. He had position and power and abundance. But he encountered Jesus and he could not deny that Jesus was the Messiah. Paul could have clung to his comfortable life. But instead, he decided to worship and follow Jesus. And it's not as if Paul despised comfort. No, we don't need to despise comfort. But comfort was not his God. Jesus was. And that led Paul to being in prison for proclaiming Jesus. Now, something you should know about the prison system at the time, you had to provide for your own needs when you were under arrest. Either your friends or your family had to care for you or you starved. Hence the purpose of Paul's letter. The letter is a thank you. Because the Philippians had sent him a gift to supply his needs. And he says, I rejoice greatly in the Lord that at last you renewed your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned but had no opportunity to show it. I'm not saying this because I'm in need, for I've learned to be content whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I've learned the secret of being content in any and every situation, whether well-fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do all this through Him who gives me strength. Contentment. Contentment is something that we often lack. Contentment is something I lack in this consumeristic culture. But he found it even in need, contentment. Regardless of his circumstances, he discovered contentment. Now, I do want to point out that different circumstances present a different level of enjoyment. There's nothing wrong with enjoying plenty. But when plenty was nowhere to be found, he still had contentment. And even in plenty, he wasn't craving more. He was content. Now, I've been talking about things and desires. But many times those are not the problem. The problem lies within our hearts. Who is our God? Jesus or our own appetites? Can I just tell you, within my circle of ministry, clergy, there's a lot of complaining by clergy about consumerism in the church. And it's a problem. I mean, when people jump from church to church for reasons of consumerism, it stunts their growth. It just does. It stunts your growth. When my worship is more about me than it is we, we're never going to experience life to the full that Jesus calls us to, that He spoke about. But can I just tell you, pastors are driven by the same consumerism. Pastors are not immune to this. Throughout my faith journey, there were occasions where I've come to the Lord and surrendered and said, "Here I am, Lord. Here I am, Lord. Send me. Wherever you want me to go, I will go." And one day He said, "Go to North Dakota." I was like, "What? That can't be right. I don't want to go to North Dakota." And God was like, "Well, I thought you said you'd go wherever I wanted you to go." I was like, "Yeah, but I thought it'd be somewhere cool. Like Colorado or Seattle or Portland. Somewhere with sports teams and concerts and theaters and art museums and world-class restaurants. The ocean, mountains." But God said, "No, North Dakota." So I don't know if you know what choice I made. I was obedient. And it turns out God did lead us somewhere cool. We may not have the amenities of a big city. We may not have the ocean or the mountains, but we've been forever blessed by the people that we've met. We've been formed into better people because of it. Despite having like a terrible argument last night, we're in the best place we've ever been. After the marriage retreat, by the way, I'm confessing. We had a terrible argument last night. But we woke up and we had some tools to we put the tools to practice. That wasn't us. Yeah. But we've been formed into better people, and we're in a better place in our marriage than we've ever been. And before coming here, I spent 5 years at a great church in Williston, North Dakota. And while I was on staff there, positions would occasionally open up. Great positions. Family ministries pastor. You have to lead a whole team, that position. I had friends in Indiana, and I said, hey, great position. Oh, no, I'm not coming to North Dakota. I mean, right now, our mother church has a lead pastor position open, and they can't fill it. This is a great church with great people, an amazing staff, wonderful facility. I mean, pinch me. It's like a dream job for so many people, but nobody wants to go there. Why? Consumerism. So from the church staff to the casual attender and everybody in between, the church is negatively impacted by consumerism. If you have lack of contentment in your life, this is not to shame you. Because Paul didn't come by this on his own, by his own will. He didn't will his contentment into being. He said that this was possible through him who gave him strength. And the strength that Jesus provides is when we place Jesus as Lord in our lives. This is when contentment and life to the full can be experienced, even in times of trouble, even in times of need. Lack of contentment combined with our fleshly desire to please self leads us to a cycle of unsatisfaction. And it can lead us into making huge mistakes. It can lead us into debt. It can lead us into addiction. But you know what it will never lead us to is life to the full. So, how do we combat this? First, we need to be aware. We just need to be aware of understanding that we view the world through consumeristic lens. And then surrender and say, Jesus, I am yours. I want to follow you, not me. And then when you sense that he's prompting you to do something or not to do something, then you obey. Then when you come to a place of decision making where you have to make a choice, pray the prayer of indifference. The prayer of indifference acknowledges, okay, God, this is what I want. This is what I'd like. But your will be done, not mine. I often say challenging things because Jesus does. Jesus does. Often I found that life presents us with two roads. And one is well paved and well lit, easy street. And often there's another one that's the hard, rugged climb. And sometimes if God is prompting you to take the road that is the hard, rugged climb, the one that we want to avoid, do you realize that contentment and satisfaction, if God's leading you that way, contentment and satisfaction is on the hard road. But when we deny him and go our way, we follow the way of the thief and we lose. Matthew 16. Jesus said to his disciples, whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. For whoever wants to save their life will lose it, but whoever loses their life for me will find it. What good will it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? Well, what can anyone give in exchange for their soul? For the Son of Man is going to come in his Father's glory with his angels. And then he will reward each person according to what they've done. Let's pray.